All right, welcome. We are live here on Main Event Fantasy on Underdog Fantasy, getting ready to do some drafts. Welcome in. For those of you who are joining or watching this video, appreciate you stopping by. Looking to have a good time. My name is Nick, aka Perfect 216, and we're here to draft some fantasy football best ball teams right here on Underdog Fantasy. That's what we do. It's what we like doing. If you're not familiar with what Underdog Fantasy is, these are best ball fantasy football drafts. Best ball means you draft a lot of teams. There's no time commitment in the regular season. There's no waiver wire. There's no trades, none of that. You're just drafting your team and the best players play. So we are going to jump into what we're doing here. So we're going to get into Best Ball Mania. With Best Ball Mania, it is a $25 entry. $2 million to first place. We can max draft up to 150 teams. We will go ahead and do that over the course of this season. I've been drafting since end of April, early May, and we'll continue to do so until we max this out in addition to other tournaments. With Best Ball Mania, you do it in pod style, so you got to be in the top 2 out of 12 in your pod to advance. That's for weeks 1 through 14. Then you got to win 1 out of 13 to be the best out of 13 teams. Week 15, win your pod in week 16, and then you get to a 539 seat final where you can win $2 million, $1 million, $500,000, or an array of prizes that get broken down here. So should be a good time. Let's jump in, and enough said. If anybody's joining us, let us know if you're getting into a draft with us. You can join on Underdog Fantasy. Click in the link below. And if you do, jump in with us and see where you fall in the board, and we'll have a good time doing it. We're just getting started tonight, a little later than normal. I normally try and get on around 10 p.m., but got a little bit of a late start. So we'll see how this goes. I'm feeling good tonight. I had some drafts earlier I did from my phone, and they went really well. There's been a lot of news in training camp. I actually just saw before I jumped on here that if you don't know, that a guy that I'm not taking a lot of just got a 4-year contract extension. That's Cortland Sutton. He just got a 4-year deal with Denver. So I guess they really believe in him being their alpha number 1 receiver. I don't know that I'm sold on him. I don't think he's a bad player. I don't think he's bad where he goes. I just don't have a lot of him because I like where other people go instead. This is a slow filling draft. Normally they draft pretty quickly, or they fill pretty quickly. We need 6 more. So if you are in here and you want to draft with us, go ahead and click on the Best Ball Mania draft and jump in, and it should load you in with us. It's a little strange that it's taking this long to fill. I was looking at earlier today, just kind of going through how drafts have changed and how the ADPs have shifted. In these best ball drafts and these underdog drafters like myself have been drafting hundreds of teams since April. We've really kind of seen it all from where you can draft from, whether you're drafting from the 1 slot, whether you're drafting from, the 9, 10, 11, 12, if you do a tight end, premium, if you're doing, you're going for an elite quarterback. If you want to, what happens if you take, a bunch of running backs early, or go 0 RB. I feel like we've hit pretty much every strategy multiple times this season already. And I feel like we got a really good handle on it. And so now this back half of this year, we will see, hopefully that really allows us to be just ready to go for the rest of the year. All right. So we are in at the 102. We like the 1-2. 1-2 is a good spot to be in. I like to mix it up. So first round, I'll just kind of take who comes to me in the first round and not try and get too cute with it. Lately in drafts, I've seen a lot of people pulling Jahmyr Gibbs up early, which I find pretty interesting, if I'm being honest. Earlier this year, Justin Jefferson was going as the 2, and now he's going as the 3, borderline 4 with Saquon. CeeDee Lamb is climbing a little bit, and Gibbs is getting picked a little earlier than he had in the past. So I find that pretty interesting, all things considered. I'm not surprised that Bijan and Saquon flipped, but I am a little surprised that Justin Jefferson went to 3. All right. And he goes, we'll start out with our anchor running back being Bijan Robinson. And so when we go ahead and grab Bijan Robinson, we can kind of look at what did he do last year, right? So last year, he started out a little slow. His first 5 games, he was ranked like the number 20, 26, 27 in terms of fantasy points per game. Slow start, but he had a pretty high snap share. And then he kind of settled in, and he was a top 10 PPR running back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times from week 6 on. And his snap share was, in the mid 70s for the most part, most of the year. He ended up being a snap share of 76% with a rank of 3rd best running back in PPR scoring for the year. I think keep that going. His rookie year, he finished 9th, and he has a snap share of 69%, but he didn't have the touchdowns like he did last year. Oh, excuse me. Yawning is a bad sign. Really bad sign. Let me flip this board over for you guys so you can kind of follow along as we go here and see what kind of plays out. I've been pretty motivated this year. This is, I think, my 4th year doing this, first year streaming, but I've learned a lot along the way and done really well for myself doing it, and hoping to just kind of keep that string of momentum going. I have a lot of fun doing this, and if anybody's here watching this, that means that you probably are too. And I love that we can grow best ball, we can grow underdog, we can grow fantasy sports more. There's a lot of people talking about the hatred for gambling and the new laws and how that's going to affect things. So enjoy it before something changes, right? So second round, we see Achane, Henry, Ashton Jeanty, string of 3 running backs in a row going off the board. Ashton Jeanty was interesting because he was going in, the 5, 6, 7 range, in April and May after the draft. And now it's kind of funny how that changes, right? Rookies kind of cool off, or the news does, but just you wait. Come training camp news, if they say he's looking like a Greek god out there and dominating everybody or whatever, then you'll see him jump back up a little bit. All right, it's coming around to us here. Bucky goes at 21. So not a lot of, we'll call it fallers. Brock Bowers would be the faller here, ADP of 19, where it's sitting at 23. But he goes there. So I'm not, y'all know I'm not a T. Higgins guy this early on. And Marvin Harrison is my favorite wide receiver to draft. He is a my guy this year. If you've seen the my guy, I feel like I talk about it every single night that I'm in on him. And I feel like we keep clicking him, and it feels great. We don't have a ton of T. Higgins lately, but I'm actually going to mix it in. I'm going to get some Davante Adams here. So with Davante Adams, when we take a look at what his outlook looks like for this year, he kind of falls in at a wide receiver 16 overall on the board. Last year he started out really slow. Now, good Lord, excuse me. Part of that's because he missed a bunch of games. He was hurt. He did only play in 14 games last year. But once he kind of came on strong and, got things going, he ended up finishing actually as the wide receiver 11 on the season. And if you look at his history, people say he's getting older, he's getting worse. Okay. Well, if you look at his finishes, his rookie year, he was 10th, 16, 5, 7, 2, 18, 1, 2, 3, 10, 11 last year. So, and his snap share has been 90% plus every year. And I expect that to continue here in the Rams. And so with him too, even with Puka there's plenty of balls that are going to come his way. I mean, look at when you had Puka and Cooper Kupp, they were both getting fed pretty good. I think Davante Adams could really hit hard. And when we get them both here, Bijan and Davante play in week 17. So we got a little bit of correlation while we're doing it. Terry McLaurin off the board. I feel like at this point, I know he's kind of at this hold-in stage. I feel like Terry McLaurin's going to end up signing and everything will be fine. So I don't have a lot of fear taking him. I don't think he's going to be traded. I think they'll want him there. And so I think they'll work something out. So if you're on the fence, if anybody was on the fence about what to do with Scary Terry, I would just go ahead and say take him. Would take him without fear, especially if you can pair him up with his QB. When you can get Jalen. Wow. Look at me go. When you can get Jaden Daniels with it. All right. Plenty of options coming around to us here. If Jaden Daniels made it all the way around to 47, I would take him as our first quarterback. I don't feel like he'll get there, but if he does, we'll see. So we'll just kind of queue up some guys that we're looking at here. And it looks like we're going to get Jaden or Tet McMillan. And he goes right before us, which is fine. With Tet, rookie. If you don't know, with Tet, there's been a lot of talk, after the draft, they showed some behind-the-scenes interviews where Bryce Young specifically asked for them to draft Tet McMillan, meaning he wants to throw him the ball, right? So I think he's going to get loaded with targets this year. Burrow goes, not understanding that pick at all. I like a lot of the players here. So, I don't think you can go wrong with what you take here. Just take the best player or the top player on the board. I was not a big DK guy last year as much. I thought his offense had too many options for targets, and I guess I ended up being right. But with Aaron Rodgers tends to feature his wide receivers pretty well. And so I think if he treats DK like he treated Davante, like he wanted to treat Garrett Wilson, I think he's going to get a ton of targets, and him being our fourth wide receiver probably feels really good right about now. So let's just kind of, for argument's sake, let's just keep the stat discussion going. Let me pull up, let me look up DK Metcalf and just kind of take a look at what he did. And you look at his career. So last year, he only played 15 games, but he was the 32nd ranked wide receiver. Year before that, 21. Year before that, 16. His highest scoring fantasy season in terms of PPR rank he was ranked the 7th wide receiver overall in 2020. So, and his snap share back then was 92%. Last year was 87. I mean, I see him being a 90% plus, 92% plus snap share guy this year. He only got 108 targets last year. I really think that his upside is pretty strong, and getting him, where we are, where we've grabbed him feels kind of good. So one of the things I'm testing out this week, I should say, is testing out the zoom here. I'm trying to figure out what is going to be the best look for what we're doing here, and see if the way these windows size up are the best way to do it. I've zoomed in more in the past, usually, but I feel like zooming out gives you guys just a little bit more visibility on how the draft's flowing. So we're going to continue to play with it. So if you watch this video and you've seen some of my other ones, just leave a comment down below and let me know, like, do you think it should be zoomed in more? Do we need to work this out to make it a little bit cleaner for everybody? I guess that's something I can probably work on a little bit here. Because like there's 150 and that just seems a little bit too zoomed in. I don't know. We'll talk about it. All right. Coming back around to 71. Jauan Jennings goes. Y'all know I am not a Jauan Jennings guy. I've said it too many times. I just don't think he's that talented, and I like getting talented players, and I don't see him being that talented. All right. There's definitely plenty of options to pick from here. So I'm fine with all of these, but I'm going to grab Laporta here. I realize this guy gets back-to-back picks before I pick again. He could take a tight end. I don't think he'll take a running back, so I'm not too worried about that, just based on what he's drafted so far. So I think he's going to go double wide receiver, and I was right. So we can go Montgomery here. We can go Pacheco, Pearsall. I mean, I think I'm just going to go ahead and grab Montgomery. He is top of ADP. I'm okay with it. Should have still a force in that offense, the way they like to use the tandem running backs. So I'm perfectly okay with it. So far, we've got no quarterbacks, but we've got Bijan and David Montgomery at running back. At wide receiver, we have Marvin Harrison, Devontae Adams, Ted McMillan, DK Metcalf, Sam Laporta. And so feels like a pretty balanced start overall. And hopefully we can do some work to pair up our wide receivers, appropriately. There used to be a way when you were zooming in on things that you could specifically decide what you wanted to set the zoom to. And I kind of want to play with that at some point. Sorry. I feel like if I'm at 125 zoom now, 150 zoom was a little bit more zoomed in, maybe like a 135 or something. Might be kind of the ideal scenario here. Josh Downs goes. Jaden Reed. It's really interesting to me how many players, this is Best Ball Mania. We want to win $2 million. And the only way to do that is to have the highest ceiling possible. And so when we're trying to win $2 million, we need to do things like correlating and stacking our quarterbacks, with our wide receivers. And so sometimes it doesn't make sense what some people choose to do with how they draft their teams. Mahomes goes to the team that's got Hurts there already. Brian Robinson. I think Brian Robinson could have a great year this year. I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to be the number one RB by any means, but I definitely think he can outscore his ADP where he's getting drafted. And if you're in a regular redraft league and you need a running back, even if he's on a bench, I think you've got a running back in a good offense. I think you should feel pretty good about that. Cooper Kupp goes. Oops. All right, Aaron Jones goes. So he's probably not getting a running back, so we could hold out on that. But I do think we need to get a another wide receiver. So we'll go ahead and grab Darnell Mooney. And we'll really lean into this Atlanta Rams, week 17 matchup where we're going to try and win us $2 million when we get to the best ball fantasy playoffs, because that's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. Kelsey goes. All right. Don't really need those quarterbacks. We can probably hold off on that. I'm going to go ahead and grab Jaylen Warren here. So far, quarterbacks, we're kicking that can down the road a little bit. We've got Bijan, David Montgomery, Jaylen Warren at running back. Wide receiver, Marvin Harrison, Devontae Adams, Tet McMillan, DK Metcalf, Darnell Mooney, and Sam Laporta at tight end. So pretty well-balanced start. We'll get those correlated quarterbacks to stack with our wide receivers a little bit later. As I've shared in the past, I'm not big on I don't want to reach on my quarterbacks. I just feel like there's plenty of ways to stack. A lot of people think that if you have, for example, I have Devontae Adams, so I have to get his quarterback, or I have Marvin Harrison. If I don't get Kyler Murray, I'm not doing a good job. No, you can have these guys. They can still go off, and you can get some backdoor stacks later on that pair up with your, wide receivers 5, 6, 7. And in past drafts, that's actually been a very good strategy to get your stacks in the back half of drafts. It's won a lot of money for people that way. Mark Andrews goes. He's a guy that is very interesting. Last year, everybody was treating him much, much higher where he was getting drafted. And you see he's got some talent in that tight end room with him, and people are getting scared about where they're drafting him. And he didn't go to the Lamar team. He didn't make it there. I got to imagine that he would have been picked here at 107 to the Lamar Jackson team, would be my guess. Ayuk goes all the way to 112. Wow, a little bit of a fall. I think Ayuk's, he's a guy similar to, that's different than what I was talking about earlier with Juwan Jennings, where I think where he's going, he's already drafting at a ceiling. Where Ayuk, just because people think he's going to miss some time and he might be a little bit injured, he's the more talented player. Let's not kid ourselves. He was the number one there for a long time, in the last few years. And so I think he's an absolute smash with where he's going in drafts. All right, McCarthy goes. Drake May could find a way to make that work, but I don't think we'll need to. We've got plenty of options at quarterback a little bit later in the draft. I do want to see where we're going to go after this. We'll be at 143. It'll be close. But we're going to wait it out. Yeah. See what we'll take. We'll take Yo B. All right, we'll take Yo B. Good for you. Takes Bateman. He did take RB. He took Bateman. I wasn't going for him anyway, so it's okay. I think what we'll do is we'll grab our first quarterback here in Tyler Warren. Could have a huge role. First round draft capital. I realized I said our first tight end. I meant our second tight end. I apologize. Could be a breakout candidate. Could do this and open up another quarterback option, but instead I think I'm going to keep. Let me grab Charbonnet here. Charbonnet, Seattle plays Carolina week 17. There's a little bit of a bring back here in week 17. And if you've not heard the statement from me before, I'm going to tell you now, week 17 is all that matters. That's kind of the mindset you want to draft in a lot of ways. And people are going to say, well, hey, I got to get it. I got to get to the playoffs. Why does that all that matters? Because that's where all the money's won. And you want to be drafting for the ceiling and drafting like you're right. So if Seattle plays Carolina in week 17, and we believe that as through our draft, that, that game goes off, right? And it's a huge game in week 17, and you have a few pieces of that game, those players could be the players that went nuclear, and that could win you $2 million. If you're not familiar with the week 17 is all that matters, if you type that in, there are videos out there that will explain that to you, even more than what I'm doing here, just to give you a better context than what I'm saying. Stroud goes 131. So now we're getting to the part in the draft. We're at round 12 coming up. We really do need to start getting some quarterbacks here. So my hope is Michael Penix comes around. That would be perfect. And then, down here later on, we have some stacking options, to throw in as well. So this is kind of what we're looking at. I will not necessarily reach for these guys. They're going to go in the 155 range. So if we don't take them here at 143 or 146, the chance that they're coming back to me at 167, it's slim. So we kind of have to decide if we feel like we need 2 quarterbacks here or if we want to push it. And sometimes pushing it works. You got pick 7. Give me a little bit of information in your, is it Janers, if I'm saying that right? How many teams in your league? What kind of format are you working with? Give me a little bit of an idea on what your league looks like, and I'll be happy to help you out. 12-man league. Yeah, pretty standard. 12-man league. I just kind of take the best player that falls to you, and if you have a preference on way to go, I think you can build out your team just fine either way. I tend to lean in a regular redraft league towards the running back a little bit to get one of those, anchor running backs, guys that you really think are going to be crucial, because I think you can make up the wide receiver a little bit in a redraft league, or here in best ball, you can't really do that. And if it's full PPR, you got guys out there like, hang on one second, like Jahmyr Gibbs. And like if Gibbs is there at 7, I would get him. You're probably not going to get a Bijan or Saquon Barkley, but those guys would be fantastic choices if you can grab one of them. Oh, do I want to push the running back quarterbacks a little further? I'm not. I'm just going to go ahead and get Bryce Young. We'll call it a day. But yeah, I think you can build your team either way. Like, I don't think you can go wrong. I think you just it really matters on what usually happens in regular redraft leagues is you're going to see your league mates, let them, don't be stuck on drafting a certain way or drafting certain players. Let them make the mistakes, and then you take advantage of them, because so many of them in redraft leagues, you can take advantage of them, especially if you know who you're playing with. If you know a guy really loves, I don't know, Drake May, he's going to take him earlier than he needs to. And that's going to be your advantage, right? Just, you're going to tune that out in your head. Let him skip over a player that you should get. Patty, absolutely. Anytime, ask any question you want. I'm here to help. You've got picks 9, 12, and 16. Would you rather go CMC, BTJ, JT, or Nico, Achane, JT? I think I'd rather go the second one, Nico, Achane, JT. I'm purely looking at the running backs here. CMC to Achane. Achane's ceiling could be higher. I think he's just getting started. You get him second. You get Nico. I think their offense is going to be even better this year. I would probably take the second, but I don't think you're wrong either way. And I'm a JT guy, so I'm with you. I support JT there. I think he'd be a great pick. And then you do Achane and JT, and you've got a really solid start, to your league. Thanks for the question. Appreciate you. And thanks for jumping on. Thanks for asking. All right. Draft is coming back around to us here. We're feeling pretty good, feeling pretty balanced. We could go a third quarterback if we wanted to, if Stafford pulls around. Don't know that we need to. But I feel really good with where we stand right now. I do want to get I'm going to go ahead and just grab a third quarterback. So Stafford, he pairs up now with Davante Adams. So now we've paired up Davante Adams, Tet McMillan, and we've paired up both Darnell Mooney and Bijan with their quarterbacks. And stacking is definitely critical. You can use it in redraft leagues. It definitely helps you. And I'll explain why more in just a second. We're going to go Alec Pierce here. But it helps you more in best ball, I think, than in redraft, because you're looking for that high ceiling. And if you're playing any league, whether it's redraft or best ball, think of it this way. You're playing to win, right? When I play, if I'm in a 12-man league like you guys, I'm not playing for third place, fourth place. No one's giving you a trophy for that, right? So I'm playing, I'd rather be first or last. So if I think that this year that, I believe in Atlanta's offense, right? Then I want to go all in on, I want to stack the quarterback. I want to stack Michael Penix with his pass catchers, right? Because that's going to give us the highest ceiling possible. Because if, Penix has a great year or Mooney has a great year, they're coming along with the ride together. And so your ceiling just goes up. You don't have to play it safe. So right now we've got a 3-4-6-2 build. If you're not familiar with best ball, you really will never need to take more than three quarterbacks. I usually actually only take two, depending on how high my quarterbacks are. We'll grab one more running back here. Wide receiver, we will grab one more of those. We may get two, depends. And we'll definitely be stopping no more than 3 tight ends. So in best ball, if you're not familiar, you start one quarterback every week. You start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and 1 tight end. And then you also get a flex. The flex has to be a running back, wide receiver, or tight end. It's not super flex. There are super flex tournaments in best ball, and I've gotten into some of those. But that is not this one. This one here is Best Ball Mania. And this is the largest fantasy football tournament in the world, and millions of dollars are won every year. This year, the number one first place prize is $2 million. Second place is $1 million. So, this is my favorite way to draft. So if you guys aren't familiar with it, I highly encourage you to give it a try. In the description down below, you can find a link to Underdog Fantasy, and that's where I like to draft. I've done teams, in various platforms. I'll draft on DraftKings, Sleeper, Yahoo, ESPN, all that. But this is definitely my favorite place to draft. All right, let's see what happens here. We can go ahead and afford to scroll down. We're just kind of picking what we like at this point. We're going to avoid weeks 8 and 5, that's for sure. Go ahead and just grab Justice Hill. Back up to Henry on a great offense. Could have some playing time. It feels good grabbing him. Let's see. We could do it. I think I'll wait on it though. So I was debating there going with another Atlanta player to do more than stacking just Mooney and Bijan. You can stack your running backs and still have a stack. A lot of people are afraid to do that. I think it depends on the right player, right? Like I'm probably not trying to stack David Montgomery with Jared Goff. He's not catching a lot of passes, but Bijan will definitely have a role in the passing game. So if he's a pass catching running back, there's nothing wrong with stacking him. And even getting you through the regular season just to get to the playoffs, it's still a value because if one of the others going off, you have them both. So it still plays out pretty well. Let's see, Patty, what do you got? I can get 2 of Nico, CMC, Genty, Henry, HN, BTJ, and still getting JT. Who do you prefer in order? Good question. If any 2 of those, and this is, let me just double check. Patty, what was your league settings again? Just so I know. But I mean, I'm probably gonna go. If you're definitely getting JT, one of these, running backs would be fine. So I guess I'd probably just go ahead and grab Nico. And then I guess if it were me, I'd take Genty along with JT if you were going to do those three. Oh, 10-man team. Okay. And it's PPR. Yeah, especially when it's PPR, when you're looking at some of those guys you're talking about here, like I'm out on Henry in a PPR. I mean, I shouldn't say I'm out, right? But especially with 10 team, you've got plenty of other options out there. Genty is probably going to catch the ball, and CMC is going to catch the ball. Achan's going to catch the ball. So I'm in on all those guys. I don't think you can go wrong, but that would probably be my order. I would go Nico, and then I would probably do Genty, CMC, Achan, Henry, and then grab JT last. That's probably how I would do it. And doesn't mean I'm right. I like to say I've been right more often than not, but listen, you guys know fantasy football is a crazy thing. So sometimes you miss, right? All right, let's finish this team off, and then we'll get into one more draft. So we're either going to go another tight end or wide receiver. So we can kind of filter this down. I think I'm going to do Sanders and do a double stack here with Tet McMillan and Bryce Young. And then we'll kind of recap this team before we head into the next one. All right. So we'll grab him. So our team here is a 3-5-7-3 build. This is pretty much your standard build if you're not familiar. You may see some variation of this, usually 2 quarterback or 3, 2 or 3 tight end, and then, anything in between on running backs and wide receivers. So quarterback, we have Michael Penix, Bryce Young, Matthew Stafford. Running back, Bijan, David Montgomery, Jaylen Warren, Zach Charbonnet, Justice Hill. Wide receiver, Marvin Harrison, Devontae Adams, Tet McMillan, DK Metcalf, Darnell Mooney, Alex Pierce, Diami Brown, if I'm saying that right. Tight end, Sam Laporta, Tyler Warren, Jatavian Sanders. We're pretty balanced across the board. We did stack Sanders and Tet McMillan with Bryce Young, and then they play Seattle in week 17. So there's a bring back there that if that game goes off, you've got a few players there, which works out good. And then with Michael Penix, we did stack Bijan Robinson and Darnell Mooney together, and they play the Rams in week 17. So we have Devontae Adams. So if that game goes off, we've got some key players there that could win us. And we actually stacked Stafford with Devontae Adams as well. So feels really good. This is a really clean draft. This is definitely, I don't know that I feel like I got a lot of values here. Like if you look at the ADPs, I'm not exactly getting huge falls, like, getting Tet ADP at 42. I get him at 47, a little bit of wins here, but nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy. So if you guys are in here and you want to join live in a draft and you're in Underdog, I'm going to jump into a Best Ball Mania. You guys are welcome to join in with me and draft alongside us. I'll give you a few seconds. 3, 2, 1. We're in. And if you end up getting into a draft with us, just drop it down below if you end up getting in here. And no problem, Patty. Nico Achan, I love it. I'm not a big Nico guy, if I'm being honest. I think there's other receivers I would prefer. But Nico definitely is a guy that I think people are into. And I can see why. Shamrock's joining us. Do you think Stafford will be good for week 1? So here's the thing with Stafford. I'm not taking him in too many drafts where I think he needs to be my QB1, right? Or let alone, sometimes QB2, depending on who I get. I think he'll be fine for week 1, but my issue with it is he's an older quarterback. He is aging. We know that. And when you have a back issue, and I was an athlete. I have a back issue right now, and it can creep up on you and over a long season. he's a tough guy. I can see him trying to play it out, but it can definitely affect him. And you have to assume that if he misses any time at all, or he's just not quite himself, back pain's tough. And so I'm a little bit worried about him. So I don't have a ton of him in drafts. We're at the 101. We're going to grab Ja'Marr Chase at the 101. We're not even going to guess, second guess ourselves here. And we're going to take him and smile. I do want to share. So let me do this for you while we're waiting for the draft to come around to us. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go to my completed drafts just to kind of show you. I've drafted a lot of teams already, 377 here, and I'll probably be over 700 by the time I'm done. So I've probably seen a lot of different variations. One of the things you can look at here is your exposure rates, right? And I've covered this in my wide receiver, draft video where I talked about my guys. And so you can filter by through. And if I look down here and take a look at my exposure rate, Stafford, 8.9%. That's average, out of 336 teams. So 8% is average. So I'm not overdrafting him. I'm not underdrafting him. So I'm not out on Stafford by any means, but I'm not trying to be overweight on him. It really is going to be dependent on, if I have his pass catchers and they fall to me where I like, then, or I get him at a value, then I'll scoop him up. And Nakua goes, I don't have a lot of Puka. So the first round, I typically will take how it comes to me and spread my, if I'm drafting multiple teams, I'm going to have a little bit of everybody in the first round, depending on where the draft falls. But Puka's not a guy that I'm just overly excited about. I know a lot of people are. I don't have a great reason to not be. Stafford, just, going into this year, I was, not huge into Puka, at least not in the first round. And now with the Stafford issue, it makes me want him less. So I feel like, training camps had a lot of injuries to start this year, and maybe more so than other past years. And so far, I've gotten my player takes right early on. And I'll give you an example, like Joe Mixon. I wasn't taking a lot of him earlier on in the summer when best ball draft started. Because I just felt like they were going to do something else, or, he was aging where he was going in drafts. I just didn't feel like the value was good. And then they signed Nick Chubb, and I was all over that because he was going in the 17th, 18th round in these drafts. And so I took a bunch of him, not a whole lot of Joe Mixon. Then Joe Mixon, we're hearing, is going to miss time. He's got a bad ankle. And so, that's winning, right? And when I say winning, it means, I'm not hurting myself, so to speak. I'm getting some value there. Drake London goes at 16. HN at 17. I know you mentioned Henry earlier. I'll talk about him for a second. Earlier in best ball drafts, he was going in round 2, picks 17 through 20. So if I'm getting a big portfolio of players and I'm going to have him here in these teams, where I can combine Derrick Henry with CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson and Saquon Barkley, and nobody else here is going to get those combinations, then I'm becoming more rare when people keep taking him over on this side of the board. I don't think he's a bad pick. I just think that I've got enough of him over here with more unique combos that make my teams more unique. All right. Harrison goes at 22. Bowers goes. I was going to take Bowers there and take the Fowler, but he's gone. I'm going to go ahead and do Chase Brown and Trey McBride. So you heard me talk about week 17 is all that matters. So Cincinnati does play Arizona at week 17. So far, if this game goes off, we've got some pieces of that, and it's very possible that that's a game you want to have. I've played from the one spot a bunch, and I've kind of mixed it up. I've done the Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins, and I get Joe Burrow. I've gotten it with Ja'Marr Chase, Chase Brown, and Joe Burrow, And, maybe from the 3-4, I've gotten T. Higgins, Chase Brown, Joe Burrow, stuff like that. So I've gotten various combinations. What I try and advise people to do is when you're looking at this, you don't want to force anything, because in Best Ball Mania, and I think I showed this earlier, but if not, I'll touch back on that in a second. There are going to be 672,000 plus teams in this tournament. So if you force Joe Burrow in round 4 or even 5, just because you want to correlate him with Ja'Marr Chase, yeah, that's a good idea. But there's going to be teams in this that are getting him in the 6th round at 72. And that's where I've gotten him. So I'd have that better chance. I'll have Ja'Marr Chase if we see each other in the playoffs, but I might have somebody else with him that's going to bring me a little bit further and give me a better chance of winning than maybe you'll have. It's not a guarantee, but that's why I say you don't need to reach. No, it's funny, Shamrock. I just saw your comment here about reaching. The one way you can do this, though, if you want to create unique teams, is like at the 101, for example. I grabbed Chase Brown here because that's where he fell, or Trey McBride. Let's just say we know that on this side of the board in the 3rd round is where Mike Evans always goes, right? You never see Mike Evans on the left side of the board. Why? Because he goes later. If you were to take Mike Evans here in the 3rd round, I think if you value Mike Evans the same as you do T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, JSN, that's okay, because now you're going to get a unique team that not a lot of people have because you reached, but you're not sacrificing value. I think what you don't want to do is have Ja'Marr Chase at the 101, and then the 102 comes around and, you go ahead and get, Mike Evans over here at, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a bad example, but you don't want to give up ADP. You don't want to give up value in your drafts just to get unique. I think if you're patient, you'll let drafters be unique for you. And I did release a video earlier talking about on a stream about my favorite draft strategies. And in that video, I was very specific. I actually pulled up on the screen a little bit of data, or at least some of the best teams in 2023 and what those strategies were, and in 2024 and how those changed between those 2 years. And then I kind of outlined my favorite ways to draft this year, my top 5. And I'm not stuck on those, but I think draft strategy matters, just like correlation with your quarterback and your pass catchers matters, just like week 17 matters. All those things give you what I call plus EV, and you want to have higher value. Nicholas says redraft 12-man PPR 111 pick. Who would you target in the 1st and 2nd round? So I haven't done a lot of redraft mocks yet this year. I've been mostly doing best ball, but we will do some. I think if you learn your team, your teammates who you're playing, that kind of gives you a little bit of an advantage in how you can play it. But I don't think you're going to have guys like Bijan, Saquon, Jahmyr Gibbs there. But if any of those guys are there, you actually want to get a piece of them. Hang on one second. Let me make these picks, and then we'll come back to that. Cook goes. He knew I wanted him. It's like he could read my mind. All right, we'll go George Pickens and Devonta Smith here. 2 guys, good offenses, team got things I feel good about. I'm not getting a lot of Chuba. I had a ton of him last year where he was going much later in drafts, and now everybody's realizing that he was a good pick. And now I think he's really being drafted at his ceiling. And I don't want guys that are drafted at their ceiling. I want guys that have higher upside. So going back to your question, I think you in a 12-man PPR team, you definitely want to at least come out of that 1st and 2nd round with 1 running back. Is kind of how I view it. And then you take your pick on wide receivers if you have a preference there, like depending on how your league flows. But, if you just looked at what we did here, for example, my preference here, like when you look at guys at the back end of round one, Amon-Ra, Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, I'm in on Neighbors. I think he's going to have a ton of target volume, which gives you a good floor. He also has ceiling. He's only in year 2. They threw to him. I'm going to pull this up. I don't think I can show it on screen right now, but Neighbors is one of my guys this year. Last year, they threw to him. Oh, gosh. Looking for his total targets. 170 times. 170 targets last year. That's a huge amount of target share for a rookie. And they didn't really add anybody that you're really nervous about as a wide receiver. So, like, if you walked out of your draft, let's say somebody fell, let's say you get Achane and Neighbors at the 1-2 turn, and that's what you walk away with. That also opens you up where, whatever happened in the 3rd or 4th round, you feel like you've got options. You can go running back. You can go wide receiver. You can go, quarterback or tight end. When you start to be single-minded and say, I'm going to go running back in the first 2 rounds, and you just pigeonhole yourself there, you can leave a lot of value that your league mates are leaving on the table. And my favorite way to beat my teammates, and I play a lot of redraft leagues with my friends every year, dynasty leagues. My favorite way to beat them is let them beat themselves. They overthink it. They got guys that, my favorite players, George Kittle, so I'm going to draft him in the 1st round. Great. Draft him in the 1st round. I'll say thank you, even if I like him, because he's just, moving other players better down the board. And so I just take the values that they give me. Yeah, man, absolutely. Happy to help if I can. A little bit of a run on running backs here. James Conner. So James Conner's an interesting one. I've got a good amount of him this year, but I think you're going to see his workload go down a little bit. He is an aging running back, and I think that you can get a lot of value, from with where. Why am I drawing a blank on his name all of a sudden? It's I've drafted a ton of him too, but my mind is fading on me. Trey Benson. I'm so sorry. Where Trey Benson's going in drafts, it's much later, and I think the value is good. So I like me some Trey Benson this year. And if you read the camp news, if you read the coach speak, which you got to be careful of, but Benson, did show up to camp jacked, put on some extra muscle. So that's not a bad sign either. So Joe Mixon is down here at ADP of 72 now, which is crazy because earlier in the year, this is what I was talking about before. He was going in at 54. And so I'm very grateful that I was not getting a lot of him. Addison goes, I liked him. We're going to keep rolling with the wide receiver train here. I'm going to get Ricky Pearsall and Stephon Diggs. So far we've got Chase Brown at running back, Jamar Chase, George Pickens, Devonta Smith, Ricky Pearsall, Stephon Diggs, wide receiver, Trey McBride at tight end. When you draft in best ball and you draft a guy like Trey McBride early on and you're taking a premium tight end in one of your first few rounds, you really don't need to get a 3rd tight end, which can be an advantage because now I can use an extra pick later in, running back, quarterback, wide receiver. When you only have to start one tight end every week in best ball drafts, that gives you an advantage. That's why a lot of people will put some stock into a premium tight end. I will say this is not my favorite way to draft, but there's extra value here by getting him on this particular team because they do have week 17 correlation because they play each other week 17 in the fantasy football playoffs. So there's a little bit of extra reason to want to get there. Shamrock says, I'm still thinking Mixon could make a bounce back. Yeah, listen, the guy's been talented. I don't have a problem with him. He could still be a guy you need. I'm actually more willing to draft him now than where he was being drafted before. I thought he was being overdrafted. I'm going to let him fall until the fantasy football community figures out where they're comfortable taking him, and then I'm going to start drafting him. So then if half the teams in Best Ball Mania have already drafted and 50% of them have already been drafting him in the 5th round, and I can start getting him in round 7. Or even round 8. That just gives me a huge value or a huge advantage, from an ADP standpoint. And I'll have much more closing line value. And sometimes you got to get lucky, like I've got player takes on guys that I don't want to get a lot of this year. I normally talk about who I like more than who I don't, but you never know who you need. But that's what kind of makes this fun. But that's why I like to draft a lot of teams. I've drafted 300 and whatever it was. I said already 350 plus teams, and I will be over 700 teams, I'm sure, by the end of we'll call it fantasy football drafting season by the end of August. So far, this build, just for educational purposes, if you guys don't know, would be called an anchor RB build, where this is where your first couple of picks, you're grabbing one running back and you're considering him your anchor. And then you punt it and you do, you fill in some of your other positions. Because you have to start 3 wide receivers at a minimum every week, and 4 if you use your flex and a wide receiver, you really cannot recover if you don't get wide receivers, enough of them early. And I like to at least walk out of the first 5 to 6 rounds with 3 to 4 wide receivers, because there is a huge cliff of talent that drops off after round 7. And there's guys that I don't mind taking that I like and I want them to fill out my teams, but it definitely changes. All right. So let's see what we got coming around to us. So I would love to do maybe Kyler to pair up with McBride and make that week 17 stack even nicer. If you don't know, I'm huge into Jaylen Warren with where he's going this year. Let's see what Silky Johnson wants to do. What a name. Ghost Pittman. Perfect. So we're going to get Kyler Murray to pair up with Trey McBride, and we're going to get Jaylen Warren as our second running back. So now we have our week 17 correlation. We've got 2 from Cincinnati. We have Kyler Murray stacked up with Trey McBride. This feels really good. I want to go back and show you guys. So Joe Burrow here, this drafter picked him at 51. He did pair him with T. Higgins, which is great. You want to do that. There's nothing really wrong with that, but there will be other teams that are going to get Joe Burrow with T. Higgins, but they get Joe Burrow at pick 70, a whole round later. And so, would you rather have Kenneth Walker and Joe Burrow, or would you rather have Caleb Johnson, Joe Burrow? Those are the kind of 2v2 questions you can ask yourself when you're drafting. Why is correlation important? They need to play each other. That's a great question. So correlation, I guess let me explain two different ways. You want to stack your quarterback with at least 1 or 2 pass catchers. That usually gives you the highest ceiling. It's been proven when you're trying to win in these big tournaments, you want to pair them. So if Kyler Murray, if Trey McBride goes absolutely nuclear in the fantasy football playoffs, you want to have his quarterback, because if he's going nuclear, his quarterback's probably going with him, right? Or vice versa. If Kyler Murray is the best quarterback in the league, you want his pass catchers to go with you. So you're kind of betting, you're doubling down on your bet, right? With correlation, the idea is that if I know that the Cardinals play Cincinnati in week 17, and that is the week of the best ball finals, so meaning the most money is won there, if I can make it to the finals and I have that correlated team, and basically what we're saying is Arizona, at this point, we're making the bet that if Arizona and Cincinnati game on this team in week 17 is the highest scoring game, let's say they put up 80 points, combined, we're going to have a bunch of players from that team that are hopefully the right ones. And if they go off, we have a way better chance of winning $2 million than if we're just picking random players that don't correlate. Hopefully that kind of helps explain it a little bit more. And there's data behind all this that maybe on a future stream I'll be happy to show. But it really just comes down to, and you'll see it, like, last year, if you look at the guy who won Best Ball Mania 5 last year, He had Jordan Love, and he had a running back stacked with him, and he had Josh Jacobs stacked with him, and he also had, I think, 2 pass catchers. I think he had his tight end Kraft, and maybe it was Romeo Dobbs. I can't remember, but and that's the team that won Best Ball Mania. Now, those weren't necessarily the guys you needed, but in that week, it worked out well. And you don't have to correlate everybody in your teams. You just want to have some correlation, built out. But the stacking of your quarterback with pass catchers is more important than week 17 bringbacks, meaning to say, if I had Kyler Murray stacked up with Trey McBride, but I didn't have any Cincinnati, players, I don't have to go out of my way to get a Cincinnati player just to make that correlated bet. It just helps increase the likelihood that if it goes off, we're in a good spot for that game. All right, it's coming back around, and Njoku goes at 118. It really hurts me to continue to pass on Judkins, but I'm going to do that. Don't have Minnesota, don't have Green Bay, to stack right here. Don't really need to. I think Shaheed is the last of a wide receiver tier here. And then Spears, I like the talent of Spears. Similar to Jaylen Warren, him and Spears were similar players in terms of comp last year. And Jaylen Warren and Chase Brown, all 3 of these guys, I had a bunch of them last year. And Chase Brown became the bigger breakout, but it doesn't mean that these 2 guys can't be this year. Shaheed, he's another one where they were talking about how he put on muscle and a little bit of extra weight this year. I don't think that offense is going to be very good in New Orleans, but I think they're going to have to play from behind. They throw a lot because they're going to have to play from behind, and they're in a dome, which means they're less affected by weather in more games than others. So dome games matter too. When you look at, I talked about that correlation of week 17. If you can correlate week 17 and dome games, I think the number one game that, fantasy football, best ball drafting, experts are looking at is, if they could stumble into the Vikings and Detroit in week 17, people like that kind of a game. Shamrock says, why is it important the teams play each other? Why not the Cards playing a different game in Cincy? Well, why not the Cards playing a different game and Cincy playing a different game? I just want to make sure I understood your question. So if I miss it, I apologize. But so it's really, you're trying to increase the chance that when we're picking a team here, we have to draft like we're right and that we're picking the perfect team. So that way, when we start drafting guys like Jamar Chase, Chase Brown, Trey McBride, and all that, we're basically already betting that this team that we just drafted, that Cincinnati and Arizona in week 17 are going to go off. It's the highest scoring game, of the week. And these are the players that you needed. And this is going to, be what wins us Best Ball Mania. That's kind of how you want to mentally play it. Does that mean that's going to happen? No. But when you start drafting your team, you kind of have to let the board dictate what it's going to give you. And you want to increase the chances and the likelihood that your team will win, a lot of money. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. And if I can explain it differently, I apologize. I definitely will. I do talk about this correlation piece in most of my videos because that question definitely seems to come up a good amount. So let's just look at a couple other teams, just kind of explain things that maybe there's some things that people are doing that I'm not a fan of in terms of builds that are easy to look at. Caleb, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. So I've seen teams where they'll take they'll take Josh Allen and Jaden Daniels together. Makes no sense. You're giving up too much wide receiver value, and you're only going to start one quarterback. The double elite QB is a strategy that never works. Absolutely never. So you basically at that point would take $25 and light it on fire and I'll just say thank you for, leaving that to me. All right. So let's see here. It's coming back around. Kind of looking ahead to see what future stacks we may have. We really only have New Orleans left later, which is fine because we do have Murray, and I'm kind of treating him like a premium stack, but we can build something out here actually with somebody else if we really needed to. So we're going to go ahead and take Kincaid here. ADP of 136. We're getting him at 144, so we definitely get some value here. He'll be our second tight end. We'll stop at tight end at that point, and then we can keep the running back show going here. We'll take Rachaad White. So far we got Kyler Murray, and we know he's stacked up with Trey McBride. Running back, we have Chase Brown, Jaylen Warren, Tajay Spears, Rachaad White. Wide receiver, Jamar Chase, George Pickens, Devonta Smith, Ricky Pearsall, Stephon Diggs, Rashid Shaheed. And then tight end, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid. So when we had this premium tight end, and now we've got another solid one coming behind him, we don't need any more tight ends. You can only start one, and we're already betting on this team. When we draft Trey McBride in the third round, we're betting that he's the guy, right? He's tight end one. So we don't need much more than that. So we're not going to waste a third pick on a third tight end. Most teams will probably have three tight ends unless you're getting Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, or George Kittle. That's just kind of the general way to go. Here comes kind of a run on quarterbacks here. Yes, absolutely, Shamrock, 100%. So, and you can get those teams can get there anyway. And if you look at the Bengals, right? So the Bengals have Joe Burrow, and they love to throw the ball, and they can put up points in bunches, right? And so if the Bengals go in there, and by the way, they have a poor defense, so they didn't get any better this offseason based on what they've put together in the draft or in the offseason. So they're going to have to throw, which means in this case, if Joe Burrow goes nuclear and throws for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, and Jamar Chase catches 4 of them, I'm just making this up, the Cardinals are going to be forced to throw, right? Which means Kyler Murray is going to throw, and if he's going to throw, he's got to throw to somebody good. So we want his pass catchers correlated. And so even though we don't have Joe Burrow, we have, a piece of that game in another way. And that both sides, we get to play both sides of it, so to speak. And if we've got the right players and that team, that game does hit, then essentially we're giving ourselves a huge edge in winning a lot of money. And if they don't hit, we made it to the finals, that stinks. But if we made it to the finals of week 17 anyway, then we're still doing pretty good because it's already hard enough to get to the finals in these bigger tournaments. But there's still money to be made. Even if you don't get to the finals. I think for me, I've done best ball and underdog the last 4 years. And I've been drafting for, I don't know, feels like 15, 20 years and redraft and dynasty. But I've been pretty successful over the last 4 years, winning over $10,000 every year. And that's profit after what I've spent. And so I plan to kind of keep that rolling. I'd love to win one of the major tournaments. I did get a team to the best ball finals last year. It just didn't pan out, but it was still a good year. Let's see here. All right, I think I know where I'm going to go with this. Go ahead and get Tyler Algier here at 153. And then I'm going to scroll down here just a smidge. I'm going to grab me. Nope, actually I changed my mind. I'm going to grab Michael Wilson. So we grab Michael Wilson, and that becomes a double stack, right? And so now we have Michael Wilson and Trey McBride double stacked with Kyler Murray. I don't want to confuse you guys with what I said earlier about reaching. Like, you notice I'm not scrolling down too far on the board until I get later in drafts. In the beginning of drafts, they pretty much kind of go in a general order, right? And some people make some crazy picks, and that frees you up to have some unique teams. But you're not going to see Christian McCaffrey go in the 3rd round. It's not going to happen. So, like, if we know Puka averages going in pick 8 and a bunch of people skip him and you can get him in pick 12, right? That's an advantage. Whether you like Puka or not, you take him, because 4 or 5 picks is a huge difference in creating a unique team. Later on in drafts, it gets way wilder, because there you're just trying to correlate teams, find values. You know, if Michael Wilson does anything at all and he's a round 15 pick, we're not counting on Michael Wilson to be like the guy you need. So if he adds some value to us and, you know, does better than what he's projected to do, then that helps our team. Yeah, absolutely, Shamrock. And thanks for asking the questions, man. Honestly, there's so many people that have a lot of questions, and the best way to get answers is to ask. It's how I learned. Learn by asking, learn by listening, and so definitely the best way to go. And if you guys would not mind terribly, I would appreciate it if anybody could, if you're getting anything out of this, any value at all, just throw a like down there. You can feel free to subscribe. I will go live. I try to go live every night around 10 p.m. Central Time, between 10 and midnight. I can't be on every night, but I do try. If you hit the notification bell, you'll get notified when I go live, and you can draft with us. I put the link in the description below, and if you click on that, you can get on Underdog and jump in with us into a live draft, and we can draft together. We can talk it up, talk about the news, talk about what's happening in training camps, talk draft strategy, talk about whatever you want. The other day I was talking about Hulk Hogan. I grew up a huge wrestling fan, so Hulk Hogan was the first person that I watched. I saw when I was a kid, and so seeing him pass away was, kind of a sad day for me. Miles Sanders goes at 184. So Miles Sanders, they just brought news on him that he's competing for a starting role with, Javonte Williams in training camp. And so that tells me there's a lot of people that like these rookies. Like, I'm not drafting Jaden Blue at all. I have him very, very rarely. But I have a good amount of Javonte. I do want to get a little bit of Miles Sanders in case Javonte's nothing. I don't want to be out on him completely. All right, so we know we're going to need another quarterback here. That's for sure. So we'll take Tyler Shuck. I guess it's Shuck, right? And then we've got 2 more picks to make here. I think what we'll do is we'll go Daniel Jones, just to be one more quarterback. He does. When we get Daniel Jones, I actually was hoping that we would get Anthony Richardson back here. I love getting him in round 17, 18 on teams where I need or I can use a third quarterback because he's got legs. Daniel Jones looks like he's probably going to be the starter to start the season based on training camp initially. I don't think they want him to be the starter, but he's probably going to be. And he's got some legs, so he can get you some points on the ground if you need him throughout the year. And what we'll probably try and do here is grab A.D. Mitchell to pair him up with Daniel Jones. And A.D. Mitchell last year didn't do too much, but he is kind of a deep ball guy. He's he's a speed guy. Maybe catches a few passes. Maybe has, one breakout game. And listen, if that's enough to help propel us to the fantasy football playoffs, then, hey, it's well worth it. Hey, Kai, why is Marv a my guy for you? So I talked about this in my guy video, but Marv, so he profiles if you look up history of college player profiles at the wide receiver position that come out He is in the top 10 of all time from a profile standpoint. Obviously, he's got the pedigree. For me, it's not just about the player, though. When you're doing best ball drafts, I also look about the player and where they're going in drafts. You're getting Malik Neighbors in the first round this year because of how he performed last year. He got, peppered with targets and did pretty well in his rookie year. Now he's a first round guy. You could easily say that Marvin Harrison, who normally goes in the third round, by the way, which this guy drafted ahead of ADP, if you can get Marvin Harrison in the third round, that's a little bit of a gap between where they could be going together, right? He could easily get better. If you look at the camp news on him in his offseason, he came back to add on some more muscle. He looks jacked. If you look up pictures of him right now, he looks absolutely jacked. And so when you look at his talent profile, he profiled better coming out of the draft last year than Malik Neighbors. He, he's on theoretically a better offense than Malik Neighbors, right? Because the Giants aren't going to be a great offense. And Arizona could be a better offense. And he's got year 2 with Kyler Murray. I just think the upside's there. And when I'm looking at guys that, if I want to win $2 million, I want to find guys at a value that I think have much higher ceilings. I'm not looking for floors, right? Sometimes you get guys with floor, but I want guys that are going to win me the league. I want guys that are going to win me $2 million. And if I can get a guy like Garrett Wilson, the third round, who I think could be a first round wide receiver this year, it's a huge value. So it's kind of how you value players. But that's at least my rationale. And just kind of quickly looking at him, what is he leaving on the table? Let's pull some data on him real quick. So he was 30th in PPR scoring last year, 79% snap share. He wasn't even on the field. A lot of guys that are number one wide receivers are on the field 85 to 90%. And so he's already not on the field last year as much as he could have been, and that goes to show you that he's got room to do more, if that makes sense. Just from a pure snap share standpoint. And I think he's going to get better in year 2. Yeah, in redraft's definitely different than best ball. I like him in redraft as well, but I wouldn't be as aggressive on him in redraft. I think I'd still take him if he fell where it makes sense. But I would still take your Jamar Chase, your Justin Jefferson stuff, your AJ Browns, your CeeDee Lambs over him. I'd probably still take Amon-Ra, Puka, Nico. I'd probably still take Neighbors, but if I'm going in redraft leagues, am I looking at Harrison or Ladd McConkey? Who would I rather have? I'd probably. Oh, sorry. Did we just time out? I think it did. Might have just timed out. Let me double check. Yeah. So let me go back over and make sure that team completed the way we wanted to. So, and it did. AD Mitchell did go. All right. So the team completed Kyler Murray, Tyler Shuck, Daniel Jones, a quarterback, running back Chase Brown, Jalen Warren, Tajay Spears, Rachaad White, Tyler Algier, Jamar Chase, George Pickens, Devonta Smith, Ricky Pearsall, Stephon Diggs, Rashid Shaheed, Michael Wilson, AD Mitchell, Trey McBride, and Dalton Kincaid at tight end. We did double stack. We have Trey McBride and Michael Wilson double stacked with Kyler Murray. Tyler Shuck is stacked up with Rashid Shaheed. Daniel Jones is stacked up with AD Mitchell. We do have Jamar Chase in Cincinnati as a bring back for our Arizona game, so that feels good. And let me look at my little cheat sheet here that I carry. I try to memorize all the Week 17 games, and you'd think I do, but every so often it hits me. New Orleans plays Tennessee. We do have Tajay Spears there, so there's a little bit of a bring back, with that game. And then Indianapolis Colts plays Jacksonville, I believe. Yeah, I'm right. And I don't have any Jacksonville players, so we won't have a bring back for that, but that's okay. So yeah, so that kind of worked out. That's our team. I think we're going to be done for the night, guys. But I appreciate you guys getting on. If you wouldn't mind shooting a like at the bottom, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you want to draft, I'll be on tomorrow night as well, around 10 o'clock Central Time, till about midnight or so, drafting a couple more teams. Last night we did some $50 buy-ins, so we'll see what happens and what more drafts they come out with tomorrow by the time we get there. And I appreciate you guys being on, and have yourself a great night.